Hello there, and welcome back to the channel. Right, horror films. Brilliant. Love them, gotta be honest. Um, it's been a pleasure of mine since I, I can remember, really, and it all started off with the Universal Classic Monster series. And some of my favourite ones, I've got to be honest, have to be the monster mashups, some of which include the House of Dracula. And I say that not including Dracula with Bela Lugosi because I have to say I found it for my age at the time, because my parents were quite liberal and let me stay up and watch them. Thank you, Mum and Dad. Um, I particularly fell in love with John Carradine's version of Dracula. I thought he was suave, charming, very, very convincing as Count Dracula. So the monster mashups, which included, as I say, things like House of Dracula, and these films included and featured Frankenstein's monster and the Wolfman, of course, all having miraculously survived various disasters at the end of each film and coming back again. So films like that, and House of Frankenstein, with the wonderful Boris Karloff playing a mad scientist this time called Gustav Niemann, who happens to kill the owner of a travelling horror circus. And of course, this horror circus contains the skeletal remains of Count Dracula. And Dr. Niemann removes that stake, and indeed those remains are the genuine article, and it is Dracula, aka John Carradine in the title role. So those are the films I particularly enjoyed, the Universal Classic Monsters ones, and not forgetting the gem that is Son of Dracula, where Lon Chaney Jr. actually plays it this time. Not bad, actually. But of course, it's the film where, famously, he gives his name as Count Alucard, wherein, if you spell it in reverse, it is, surprisingly enough, Dracula. Haha, who'd have thought? Anywho, so yes, horror films are plenty, really, aren't they? I've enjoyed, obviously, things like Halloween. Of recent times, I did enjoy Longlegs. I thought that was an absolute masterclass in filmmaking. I know that Nick Cage wasn't in it lots of the time, but do you know what? That guy delivered an absolutely stellar performance, which was unnerving and creepy. The guy is brilliant, and I admire Nick Cage because he doesn't pick run-of-the-mill roles, and that's brilliant. So I'm glad he doesn't pick run-of-the-mill roles, because he, to me, makes films that are interesting, and I do like the guy in that respect. So I thought, as I say, Longlegs, very atmospheric, very good film. Some of the cinematography, especially the intro of the film, reminded me of things like The Ring, and Rings 2, etc. Again, another film I think is superb, brilliant film. Again, The Ring and The Grudge, two of my favourite films. Love them as well. Love the atmospherics. Very well done. And I go on to my John Carpenter ones. I know I've probably mentioned these before, but please forgive me. Two of my all-time favourites is going to be The Thing, 1982. I think very underrated and up against some stiff competition that year. But I think this is an absolute masterpiece of horror. Horror sci-fi, I argue it is. I think at times my life has thought that it's a horror film, but I tend to think it's a sci-fi horror, really. It's one of those films that I can watch again and again. And I've managed to pick up the prequel recently that was made in 2011. And even though it's not directed by John Carpenter, I think it actually works quite well along with this one. It certainly retains the elements of gore and all the stuff that you come to know and love in the original 1982's The Thing, which I was just mind blown when I discovered this film. Absolutely fantastic. And Kurt Russell is superb as R.J. McCready in this film. In fact, the whole cast, play their parts very, very well. And when you consider the timing of the effects, the time of the effects in '82, they really work well. There's some pretty gruesome scenes and grotesque shape-shifting from the said alien, and it all works very, very well. And as I say, the prequel I'm very pleased with. I know it was 2011 that it was brought out. I don't think it had much fanfare, but you know what? It's a very good prequel. I really enjoyed it, actually. My next one is going to be the rather sublime They Live, political commentary on society. Again, another sci-fi one, really, with the late wrestler, sadly, Rowdy Roddy Piper in the role of John Narder. They wear the sunglasses. They wear sunglasses that have this specialised Hoffman lens in, and by putting them on, you can see that actually all of humanity is being brainwashed. And as you look at adverts and newspaper headlines and magazines, behind the adverts for holidays, for argument's sake, or it's telling you to consume, obey, sleep, which in a way is not such a stretch to believe these days, because I think things are a bit like that anyway. So anyway, They Live, a very good science fiction film, social commentary, just great, absolutely brilliant, love it. Do you remember those times when we had the live action sort of, home video cam type films like the Blair Witch Project, etc.? Now, one of those said films was directed by J.J. Abrams, and it is Cloverfield. I really did like this. I'd never seen it in the cinema or anything like that. Managed to pick up this cheap Blu-ray. I thought, I'll give it a look. And I was pretty impressed, I have to say. I thought this live footage style film worked incredibly well. And it kept me gripped. It really did, from the moment that you see the explosions that are going on outside. Obviously, they evacuate the building, then you see the Statue of Liberty's head landing in the middle of New York City, of course. On the road, on the highway. It's pretty dramatic and works very, very well. And when I was seeing these effects, I thought this looks quite good. It was very convincing, I thought, anyway. So Cloverfield is definitely a favourite. Whether you call it sci-fi, whether you call it horror, whether you call it sci-fi horror, I don't know. But to me, it's a wonderful, superb film by the wonderful J.J. Abrams. My two, well, I say two, going back to vampires and horror films, I mentioned about John Carradine, obviously. Another film I managed to catch recently was Renfield. starring again, as I mentioned in Longlegs, that wonderful, crazy actor, Nicolas Cage. I just thought, as Dracula in that role, I know it was a black comedy as well. It was a very gory black comedy, but he played the part of Dracula absolutely superbly. That guy really, really, um, he just nailed the part. It was fantastic. Nick Cage was great as Dracula, and Nicholas Hoult as Renfield was superb as well. I mean, it was just a blast. I loved that film. Really, really enjoyed it. It was brilliant. I mean, there was a lot of, blood and guts in it and whatnot, but it was just superb. What a brilliant film. And if you want to check it out, I would urge you to check out Renfield. I think it's a bit of an unsung film, really. It's just brilliant. I think it's a great, great horror film. Obviously, a bit of dark humour in it, but it's wonderful. Great film from start to finish. Finally, just a couple of quick films, if you don't mind. Another favourite of mine is it's a Hammer production. It's very sort of low budget in effects, etc., etc. But it is, again, I just think it's brilliant. It is, I think in America it's called 1,000 Miles from Earth or something like that. But over here in the UK it's called Quatermass and the Pit. Andrew Keir is Professor Quatermass in this, and it involves a unidentified, well, initially I think it's an unidentified World War II bomb that's not exploded, was used by the Germans and sent over to Britain, and it just has been buried under mud and all sorts of things for years. But of course, on trying to do the usual tests on it and see if it's ticking and see if there's an entry point in it, it proves that it is not a bomb, but it is something completely different and unidentified, when in fact it is actually an alien craft from a long, long time ago, indeed. So, Quatermass and the Pit, a brilliant entry, I think, into the Quatermass world, because I've got the other two as well. Quatermass Experiment and Quatermass 2, which starred the American actor Brian Donlevy as Professor Quatermass. And finally, a recent purchase from Beyond the Grave. Hardly ever see this on TV, but I remember watching it for the first time and it was absolutely brilliant. 4 great tales, all different and all quite eerie in their own way. Yeah, I mean, there's some, that some of the tales are weird, but they're great. They're really good. They're really good. So I must admit, I have to say, this is, yeah, a good film. It's an anthology film, and these were the sort of films, I've got to be honest, I was really into growing up. The Amicus films and Tygon, etc. Not so much. Well, the Hammer films, yes, but things like the Frankenstein franchise with Peter Cushing mainly apart over Dracula, although I did like Dracula AD 1972, and there's some odd ones like Psychomania with a biker gang that just they basically kill themselves and come back to life. So yeah, anyway, that's an interesting one to look out for if you get a chance. But anyway, from Beyond the Grave, again, Peter Cushing, the master in this film. David Warner as well is playing a good part in this. Ian Ogilvy as well, who was once played the Saint in Return of the Saint. It's just such a good film. As I say, 4 creepy tales, but worth a look. So anyway, thank you for your patience in this. What are your favourite horror films? Let me know, and I'll see you again. Thanks, guys. Bye.